It seems everyone, everywhere, is thirsty.
You goddamn right. So I got into the Code Vein network test, and I wanted to make a video of my early impressions of what we've seen so far. The character creator gives you plenty of freedom. While it doesn't have very many body sliders, it more than makes up for it with the options you have for color palettes, even adding, removing parts of your costume, and even being able to make your own custom hairstyle. Now, the one body slider you do have is called Overall Balance. Let's see what it does. On male characters, it adjusts how broad your shoulders are, how muscular you are, going from a slender frame to a more broader frame. Let's see what it does on females. Well, on female characters, it mostly does the same, to a lesser degree. It makes you a little bit more broader, your arms get a little thicker, and so does your waist, but nothing else seems to be getting bigger. Nothing at all. Now let's make ourselves an anime protagonist. Half the hairstyles are mirrored versions. Males and females have access to the same hairstyles, and there are a few hairstyles that are base for customizations. Some of the accessories you have access to are hair parts that you can assemble into your own style. Using these styles, you can make your own unique hairstyle. So for my own taste, for what I want this character to look like, the default hair is fine. You can change the highlights and percentage of the shine. For faces, you don't have too much customization. You just choose one of the options. There isn't really anything else to say about it. No other options really to make them more unique. But when it comes to your eyes, you do have a lot more customization, from choosing from a variety of irises to the color of your sclera, the white part of your eyes. I know I'm not pronouncing that properly. You do have 2 color options for each eyes and heterochromia options as well. Makeup options are pretty much the same on males and females, and considering the theme and the aesthetic of the game, it'd be a huge surprise if men couldn't go all out with the mascara. There's a few options for your scars. Hey, wait a minute. I just saw a mirror option for your scars. Why isn't that there for the hair? Next up, there's more makeup options. They can also be bruises as well if you change the color. You also have your accessories here, and there's quite a lot of options to choose from, including the hair bits I mentioned earlier. Usually I give my characters in these kind of games glasses, but I don't really like how they look in this particular game. There aren't too many costumes, at least to start off with. Hopefully there will be more that unlock from playing the game, but you can customize the parts of your outfit, choosing whether or not to display various pieces. You have a lot of options for the colors. The palette variety is really great. So keep in mind your blood veil, your armor or sub-weapon does blend with your costume, but you can change this later in the hub area if it clashes too much for your liking. Now, our last customization before our voice is the mask. You have a few options here. Some cover up your face more than others, but it's not always displayed. During normal gameplay, you'll typically have it on, but while in the hub area and in some cutscenes, you'll have it off. There's also a frame for your mask, which isn't too important, but adds a little bit more customization to it. Now that we've made our hero, let's scrap him. Now this is more like it. Let's start the actual game now. The game starts you off in a tutorial that explains basic gameplay, but also explains blood codes, which are your class or job that you can equip. How to learn skills, so you can skip the tutorial through the missile, which is this game's version of the bonfire if you wish. After the tutorial, you wake up in the lap of the mysterious girl in white. I swear, you spend most of the beginning of the game in her lap. Honestly, I think they're telling us what her true strength is. Her chest is bigger than anything the player can have, but the true power of this waifu comes from her lap pillow. But if husbandos are more your swing, don't worry, you'll get the first one of those not too far into the game's first chapter. The story starts off with you waking up after dying and coming back to life. You've lost your memory, and the mysterious girl in white has lost significant portions of her own memory, aside from vague hints of her purpose that she needs to fulfill. Revenants will lose bits and pieces of their memory each time they die, and eventually, if they don't consume enough blood, they become lost, which are this game's version of the Hollows. The main source of blood for revenants is called blood beads. They're a type of fruit that grow from trees called springs, but these springs have been drying up. But good news, you're the chosen one, and your blood can revive these springs, and you become the hope of revenants everywhere.
Yeah, all dried up, so there's no sense in searching with the miasma like this. Let's...
You know what these are, right?
Blood beads, right?
Yes, very good. Now I want you to search for blood beads in the tunnels ahead of here.
Gameplay is very similar to Bloodborne. Despite being a Souls type, you'd expect it to be a little bit closer to Dark Souls. You don't have a shield, but you can block with your weapon, which has its own defensive stats. You take chip damage whenever you block, dependent on your weapon type. It'll have its own strengths and weaknesses versus other types of damage. When leveling up, you just make your number go big. You don't really put any points into your stats. Your stats are determined by your blood code, which is, as I mentioned earlier, what class you are. It's a piece of equipment that you can change out freely at any time, and it'll swap your stats around based around your level and what code you have equipped. Your secondary weapon is called your blood veil. It also acts as your armor, basically like your gun from Bloodborne. The type you have will determine what sort of parry you have, what timing you need to pull it off properly. You start off with the claw. It's very comfortable parry speed, gives you a very fair window. There are other types as well, such as the stinger, the hounds, and the ivy. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses, so playing around with each one to find which one best works with your playstyle is recommended. Your blood veil is also used for charge attacks, which will grant you Ichor when you successfully hit an enemy with them. This is your resource for spells, abilities, and you can also overcharge it by continuously using your charge attack on enemies. Your blood veil can also be chained in with your regular attacks. There's quite a bit to the basic attack system. You even gain a launcher and a knockback when you enter focus mode, but you can only enter focus mode after taking so many hits from enemies. The weapon variety is a little bare bones, especially for a game made by the God Eater team. While there aren't as many weapons in God Eater as there are in Monster Hunter, there's a few fun ones in there. In Code Vein, however, you have longswords, greatswords, polearms, great hammer / axes, and bayonets, which, gun with a bayonet on it. I doubt they'll add in any more before launch, but if an expansion or update that comes out that adds maybe 2 to 3 more, that would be a lot better. Or even if they just add the ability to dual wield swords. Honestly, I want that in every game though, even non-combat games like Animal Crossing. Jeez, I think I have a problem. Now for difficulty, since this is a Souls-like genre, the opening chapter of the game is very easy. Perhaps they ease you into the game before they amp it up. Once you get past the first boss, the demo ends. When going back through to get footage of it, I honestly just decided to see if I can summon someone to see if it makes the game that much more easier, or if they apply any sort of balancing to it. Don't know if you'll ever see this video, but thanks, Kai. Yeah, you can pretty much just Big Brother Revenant your way through and turn everything into mush. And I have him point out all the chests you missed because you're just running through for some footage, but he didn't know, and I appreciate him for it. One of the throwaway NPCs mentions something about someone called the Hunter, saying not to be caught by him because he's been spotted around, but honestly I don't know if I just missed some corner where a big boy was waiting to show me what's good, or if it was this Red Eyes guy hanging around his chest containing the goodest of boys. If it was this guy, even without a player helping me speedrun this, he was a total chump on my first playthrough. There was an extra map added into the end of the demo once you completed the story segment, which displays what I'm going to assume is the game's mid-level content, and I gotta say, it was really fun. The ability to have a NPC partner always with you doesn't necessarily make the game any easier. They added more enemies that you can encounter at any given point, Not so much that you're fighting off a horde all the time, just enough to balance out the fact that you do have a partner with you.
Glad to be together.
Enemy ambushes in this game are actual ambushes. I remember in Dark Souls you can see them from a mile away, and you can even target the enemies pretending to be dead, so you had no issue at all taking care of anything that you saw coming. However, in this game, you cannot target the enemies that are actually pretending to be dead, and with so many dead enemies decorating the map, you start to not really think about it so much. And then you walk into this capoeira guy who just decides to kick your ass, and while everyone decides it's time to wake up and gang up on you. Enemies can parry you, but there appears to be a small window right before they land a riposte that you can dodge. I'm not sure if this is intended, but it does give a little bit of forgiveness if it is. It's also this one hint towards an invasion mechanic, or perhaps it's just a trap that will only be used by enemy AI. I don't know exactly how it works because I think I glitched it out once I ran towards the missile. Every time I killed one of these guys, a new one would just spawn in and run right for me. Enemies won't chase you to the missile. They'll start to back off once you're a little bit too close to one. So I just exploited this to cheese up some EXP. Most glitches and bugs I ran into seemed relatively minor, aside from frame drops during co-op sessions, which I imagine was the main purpose for this network test, aside from making sure the servers don't, explode. Not every session had this. A couple of ones I did have worse move, and there were others that were better than others when it came to the frame drop. There were some frame drops and skips when using counters and backstabs when the critical camera kicked in. It did seem kind of random when it did happen. I couldn't really find any sort of link causing this to actually happen. And the aforementioned EXP factory in the previous segment. Other than that, the game is really solid. After having a chance to play this game for myself, I'm really excited for the full release. The game was fun. It has a lot of potential to be its own thing upon full release, or perhaps even after some updates. Maybe if the game is well received, its sequel can really flesh itself out as something much more its own, but that's still a ways off. I'm personally excited to see where this goes and if it'll have any staying power, or if it will simply just be a bit too derivative in its final product. And remember, she gives lap, she will have snack, but most importantly, she gives snack back.
Here. This is for you.